I think I played a lot of good games in 2023. My backlog has gotten varied and deep enough that I can play something of any genre whenever I want, so I managed to play a diverse list of games both in genres and in age. I'm not going to have any rules in this video for if I played the game before or not. As of now, it doesn't really matter to me. I also won't be spoiling any games on here because what's the fun of that? Anyway, here we go.
System Shock.
I have never played a game like System Shock. Whatever the gameplay loop was, I just could not find it. After about 2 hours of the first half of the first level, with zero actual progress, I put the game down. I'm excited to play the remake someday, but this game has just aged too poorly for me right now. I'm bummed about it.
Metal Gear 2.
Not Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear 2. When I booted this game up, I really expected to like it a lot more than I did. It immediately has the Kojima flair and vision, but I never ended up enjoying the game all that much. Some of the ideas and gameplay tricks he throws in there are super creative and immersive, like a pigeon only wanting to eat specific ration food, or a prisoner communicating with the frequency through Morse code by banging on a wall. But the minute-to-minute gameplay just did not work for me. It's a really neat game and a classic worth playing, but I don't know if it's worth finishing in 2023. I'm glad I played it, but I was never excited to turn it on. I'm not sure if I would say it's great or even that good, but it's definitely notable.
King's Quest 2.
See, I can play old games. I just think the series is so cute. It's nothing mind-blowing, but it has this very casual adventure feeling to it. It's the adventure game equivalent of taking a walk through a park and using your imagination. It manages to be this urgent, sweeping adventure while feeling semi-casual like you have all the time in the world. The characters and locations are often fairy tales, but that familiarity creates this very cozy environment. It reminds me of looking through the 3rd grade library. I think it's a game you need to play with a guide because the series can get very obtuse, but the journey is a joy. I also think this one took a huge step from the last. King's Quest 1 is very crude, but now the series is rounding out a little bit more. The pixel art just keeps getting better and better too.
Dragon Quest 2.
When you're a big fan of a franchise and want to play all the games in it, sometimes you need to step up and play the game nobody likes. I will say though, typically it's the second game of the franchise. I do not really know why. Dragon Quest is no different, and 2 was a roadblock in the series for me for a lot of years. While it's not as bad or dated as I was led to believe, I do think it's the weakest game in the series, at least the weakest that I've played so far. I spent a lot of time grinding, and the world and the moments were never all that compelling. The difficulty is all over the map, and when I try to think back on my entire experience of the game, the main thing I remember are my grinding spots. The world is a nice step up in scale from Dragon Quest 1, and it's nice to have party members even if they don't provide much, but there isn't really much there besides that.
Footsies.
With Street Fighter 6's release, I made an attempt to get good at fighting games this year. Unfortunately, I did not get good at fighting games this year, but I did try. Part of that effort had me try Footsies to learn, well, Footsies. I don't really know if this actually helped me in Street Fighter at all, but it's an interesting game to try for fighting game fans. The arcade mode has you play against a bunch of fighting game stereotypes like blockers, spammers, hit punishers, etc., and you need to figure out how to beat them with your limited options. There are some other game modes, but I was pretty bad at them since I have awful reaction time. The arcade mode's pretty strict. It's a neat game, but there's really only so much to do in it. The online player base seemed pretty dead. I couldn't get any player versus player fights going. I think I'd like it more if online wasn't empty.
God of War.
The first one, on the PS2. So from this point on, the quality of the games I played this year take a huge leap because I really did enjoy the first God of War. I'm also a little disgusted and uncomfortable by God of War 1. It's truly mindless violence, but it is fun, mindless violence. There are just some violent things that happen in this game that kinda give me the ick. That being said, the other big issue with it is the very unevocative depiction of ancient Greece, but it does give enough to stay compelling. Kratos at this point has to be the least likable protagonist I've ever encountered in a game, however. I know it probably changes with the PS4 one, but this guy is the worst and I actively root against him. I am very excited to play the sequels at some point though. I want to see what more the series has to offer. Hopefully the next one doesn't have me spend half the game in a freaking temple.
NHL 23.
Well, Chell is Chell because they're never going to make any major changes to this franchise. It's a scam and I wish I didn't have to buy it every year, but the online scene is just way too thin to stay with the old one. I guess my friend's marginally interested in hockey, which is always a nice thing. I did have fun with it, about as much fun as I had with 22, but I'm not nearly good enough at Chell to talk about anything that needs to be changed. Truculence seems anti-fun though. They made the Rangers a super team with all these X Factors, however, so that's charming at least. Shame the actual team couldn't play like that.
Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
So this is a game that's probably worth a video. I have never hated a good game as much as this one, and I've never loved a bad game as much as, well, this one. It's a true enigma where I strongly dislike so much of it, but I also can't stop thinking about it. It's a game where the story and the characters made me audibly groan for nearly every cutscene, yet it managed to get me choked up by the end of it. I'm thoroughly embarrassed by it, but I also have a ton of more memories from it. Do I love it? Do I hate it? I guess it's up and down, but if I had to choose, I would say right now, I have no
Fire Emblem, New Mystery of the Emblem.
So, one of my toxic traits is that I'm a DS Fire Emblem apologist. The games are ugly as all sin and a massive step down in complexity from where the series was before, but overall they are fun if generic experiences. This one's the remake of 3, and I had a good time returning to Marth's story. The script was not nearly as well thought out as Shadow Dragon, making Marth much more generic, but it wasn't totally unexpected for a translation of a Japanese-only game. I haven't played the original Fire Emblem 3, so I can't speak on the changes or chime in on why the player unit is hated so much, but I did find him aggressively, well, bland, in a game that needed a lot more spice. However, considering how spicy and eccentric the units have become in the later games, it's refreshing to play a standard Fire Emblem like this. It's just meat and potatoes, but sometimes that hits the spot.
Diablo 4.
So I had a really good time with this game, but I wish I was enabled to have a better time with it. A lot of people are angry at it for various Blizzard-related reasons, and, well, they are absolutely correct and valid. I wish I had more hope for the future updates and seasons, but unfortunately Blizzard thinks of money first and only these days. Despite that, the game is quite fun. Smashing through these hordes of demons using flashy abilities is a good time. Traveling through dungeons and trying to find better equipment, and the excitement when a rare one finally does drop is a nice little gameplay loop that kept me coming back. That being said, everything seems to be about ocean size and a centimeter deep. It never really blew me away, but it stayed consistently fun enough that I kept revisiting it. The story isn't amazing at all, but it is compelling enough to make me pay attention and care about the character beats, and it's intriguing enough to make me care about what is next and what happened in the previous 3 games. I didn't really appreciate how much I was enjoying it until after the story was done and there was nothing there in its place. As a side note, the first cutscene in the game is one of the best video game related videos I have ever watched. There's also a cutscene at the end of the game that's just spectacular. Blizzard does cutscenes like no one else. Feel free to watch the opening cutscene if you want, it doesn't spoil anything. All that being said, the entire game is bogged down by Blizzard's greedy and selfish tendencies to the point that I can't recommend it unless you find a good sale. It's not worth $70 in its current state. I did not find any of the post-game content to be worth it.
Witcher 2.
So I'm not going to go into as much detail about Witcher 2 since Joseph Anderson has a video on it that's the length of all of my videos combined. He pretty much just hits the nail on the head enough that I don't think I could add anything more. It's about as comprehensive as you could get. As a fan of the book series, Witcher 2 is a lot more rewarding than the first game. It felt like the book plot was genuinely moving forward this time. The player impact into the narrative was also unlike anything else I've encountered in games so far. It's really impressive. It's ambitious and unique, and it makes up for the clunky controls and just the awful combat mechanics. It is just a really fun world to experience, though. I enjoyed questing and I enjoyed talking to characters. Some major book characters finally get name dropped, though, and it was a long time coming in these games. I'll always have a soft spot for this game, even if I don't think it's the best thing in the world.
Tears of the Kingdom.
Speaking of games that aren't the best thing in the world, I've already laid out my issues with this game in a video which is going to be linked somewhere, so I don't think there's a ton more for me to say about this one. I think I put the most time into this game than any other game I played this year, and though it sometimes really felt like a chore, I did have a good time with it. The scale is commendable, the graphics pop, new gameplay pieces like Ultra Hand or high-end Nintendo content. I think the game has a muddy artistic vision and a dreadful story, but despite that, it's going to be a classic. I just don't think it's ever going to be a game I see eye to eye with.
Mirror's Edge.
Mirror's Edge is another classic that I've discussed on the channel. I think Mirror's Edge deserves so much more attention. I'm always surprised with how unpopular it is. It's a short but sweet, polished platformer that's exciting to play from start to finish. I wish its speedrunning community was a lot larger to give a second life for this game because it fits the hobby just perfectly. The series may be dead, but I genuinely believe that everyone should play it at least once. And play it while you have a chance, because EA's acting really weird with it. Do not believe their lies.
Kingdom Hearts.
I really like Kingdom Hearts. Exploring these Disney worlds is a treat. I think the game is overdramatic and really hard to follow and campy. And the voice acting's really bad. But you know what? All these things together make the game super endearing. I mean, it's the fusion of Square Enix and Disney. I feel like it needs to be all these things. The gameplay is very enjoyable until you need to swim or fly, then it becomes very not enjoyable, but alas. It's just a purely charming and genuine joy to play. Also, am I crazy, or are the achievements for this game a bit insane? Last thing, the entire final boss fight sucks.
Darkness, darkness! You see, darkness, the darkness!
Street Fighter 6.
I've always had a bit of a gamer crush on the Street Fighter series. I've always followed it, but I never got remotely good at it. I was so stoked when Street Fighter 6 came out because it has a lot more opportunities for beginners. Unfortunately, I'm still mega cheeks at it. It's fun as hell and it looks amazing, but I never turned a corner on it. I ended up making the channel instead of practicing my Street Fighter, so I can't really express how complex and deep the mechanics are, mainly because I suck at the mechanics and I don't understand them. Maybe next year I could scrape to being slightly below average at it. Until then, I shall not be hitting these streets.
A Link to the Past.
So, this used to actually be my favorite game ever, but it's fallen out of my favor significantly over the years. I think it's also fallen out of the public's favor significantly over the years. As I've aged, I've enjoyed delving into what makes each Zelda unique. A Link to the Past, however, kind of stands on being the opposite. It's a joy because it's the heart of every Zelda game. Each game in the series takes a huge piece from A Link to the Past with them. It's enchanting and fun, and it's a game I can always revisit but rarely crave. It's more of a comfort than a favorite anymore. That being said, Zelda at its simplest is still perfection. Hyrule is a joy to explore, meeting the various strange inhabitants sticks with you forever. The dungeon play is elite, with a huge amount of variety, yet all of them stay singular and memorable. I adore the feel of the running shoes. It's a perfect balance of difficulty, the soundtrack is arguably the best in the series, the game is just freaking magnificent. Despite all of this, I have never 100%ed this game because of the stupid digging minigame. I can never get this heart piece.
Bloodborne.
Bloodborne is my second Souls game. Before that, I've only played Elden Ring. The hype behind Bloodborne was monstrous. I've had this game presented to me as the PS4's best many times, and well, it's pretty good. Honestly, this game might be perfect. The atmosphere is just peerless, and it has this magical effect that Elden Ring also gave me where I basically know all the levels by heart now after only playing it once. It's spectacular, and it may be a perfect game. I did not end up liking it more than Elden Ring though. There's a lot of quality of life changes to Elden Ring that I missed in this one. Things like blood vial grinding and having to run through levels after losing a boss fight got tedious here and there. I also found this game significantly easier than Elden Ring, which has plenty of pros and cons. Nothing about Bloodborne felt unfair or cheap, which is good, but I also felt like the game was incredibly easy compared to Elden Ring. Obviously it's harder than the average game, but outside Mikolash, no boss took me more than 2 tries. And I'd even argue that Mikolash is a gimmick fight first. I'm not really sure why I had such an easier time with this one. Maybe the speedier combat spoke to me more, but the difficulty was a big letdown for me. It's a masterpiece, however, and I will join everyone else recommending it endlessly. It's not my favorite PS4 game, however. Right now, that designation belongs to...
Last of Us 2.
I'm gonna risk the controversy. F it. This game is incredible, and it's one of one. The disrespect it gets boggles my mind. I have not played a game that has emotionally challenged me like this before, and I don't think I will encounter another one until Last of Us 3 comes out. It's mean-spirited as hell, and it makes me feel downright bad, but the emotional payoffs and character writing in this game are just spectacular. I don't like anyone by the end of it, but I understand them, and that works just as well, and it's arguably even more impressive. The scope and the set pieces are bold and intense, and the opening act taught me that no one in this world is sacred enough to survive to the end. This aggressively works to the story's favor. The gameplay is just as fun as Last of Us Part 1, minus all the ladder fetching and raft floating. This is a good thing, by the way. I have some big complaints about pacing, but you have to trust where the story's taking you, and it's well worth the wait. It's also the best looking game I've ever played. Despite all that praise though, it is not my favorite game I played this year. There's one more. It's called Chrono Trigger. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that Chrono Trigger may be the best game I've ever played. It's genuinely difficult to even make the case against it at all. It's the product of the JRPG Dream Team with the fusion of Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest to create a high point of the entire genre. Its pixel art is spectacular, its soundtrack is gorgeous. The gameplay is a compelling pivot from classic turn-based combat in a way that hasn't really been replicated since. Just on a surface level, the game has everything. Going deeper, its story is everything you can want from an SNES game. It's simple on paper, but with a lot of heart and depth. It even manages to be subversive. The characters are all simple, but all have an ocean of complexity beneath them the farther you get into the game. There's an immersed attention to detail that needs to be flawless to provide a good time travel story, and the game manages that and provides even more. It has the set pieces and emotional highs of the best Final Fantasies while keeping the humor and levity of the Dragon Quest. Some moments in the game genuinely made my jaw drop. It's all tied together with the most profound game over screen I've ever witnessed. If you are even remotely a JRPG fan and somehow haven't played this yet, please do. It's worth all the hype and then some. I really do not think a better JRPG exists. Aside from playing Chrono Trigger, if you like this video at all, maybe give it a like. If you really liked it, maybe give it a subscribe. If you love what I said or hate what I said, give it a share so I can get ratioed. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. This is Itchy Ankles and I'm buzzing off.